baseball, the national pastime. The sport has captured America for over a century with its unique blend of athletic skills. And the best players, the very best players. They've made the sport a thing of beauty, bringing unity and happiness to all walks of life. Let's turn back the clock to yesteryear and review the best of the best as we take a look at the golden greats of baseball, 50 legendary stars. Baseball is a sport for everyone. The Hollywood stars to the hourly workers. Men, women, children, all weave a common thread through this great game. The old ballparks, the hot dogs, the voice of Mel Allen, all combine to create a nostalgic benchmark in our collective lives that live on through our children. It's this common thread, connecting all of us, that makes the game of baseball so unique. Pastoral in setting, the passing thought of an Ernie Banks saying, "Let's play too," calms our soul and makes us, if only for a moment, young again, when times were simple and thoughts were happy ones. Babe Ruth was the superstar pitcher and slugger that propelled baseball into its national pastime status. He was such a valuable slugger that even though he was a star pitcher, Ruth was moved to the outfield, where in 1919, he set a record of 29 home runs for the Red Sox. The following year, they sold him to the New York Yankees. With the Yankees, Ruth broke his own home run record with 54, 59, and in 1927, 60 home runs. In all, the Babe hit 714 home runs and was selected to baseball's Hall of Fame in 1936. Lou Gehrig, the Iron Horse, hit 340 in 17 years with 493 home runs and 1,900 runs batted in. Gehrig set the consecutive game Ironman mark and appeared in 7 World Series. Joe DiMaggio, the Yankee Clipper, was the premier player in the 1940s. In 13 seasons, DiMaggio batted .325 and smacked 361 home runs. Joltin' Joe was also a center fielder without peer. And DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak still stands. To top it off, Joltin' Joe appeared in 10 World Series and entered the Hall of Fame in 1955. Bob Feller was a star pitcher for the Cleveland Indians with 266 career wins. Meanwhile, for 10 years, Roy Campanella was the premier catcher in the National League. Standing only 5 feet 9.5 inches tall, Campy was a power-hitting, slick fielding, hard-throwing catcher for the boys of summer, the Brooklyn Dodgers. A 2-time most valuable player, Campy hit 242 home runs and had a .988 fielding average before a car wreck ended his career. Campy played in 5 World Series and entered the Hall of Fame in 1969. He's also known for his colorful display at home plate when a call went against the Dodgers. Carl Furillo, the Reading Rifle, patrolled right field in Ebbets Field. He did this through the glory years of the Brooklyn Dodgers in the 50s. Furillo was a career .299 hitter. He had some power, but he's best known for his strong throwing arm from right field. Carl Furillo had 151 assists from the outfield, but he was also one of the outstanding clutch hitters for Brooklyn. A fiery competitor, He emblazoned the typical Brooklyn Dodger spirit of the 50s. Phil Rizzuto on the left was the Scooter, the star shortstop of the New York Yankees. He played in the 40s and 50s and was the MVP in 1950. Pee Wee Reese, the Brooklyn Dodgers shortstop of the 50s, is a Hall of Famer who held the Dodgers together with his defensive wizardry. And it was Reese who helped smooth the way for Jackie Robinson. Robinson, who broke the color barrier in baseball in 1947, proceeded to hit .311 in a 10-year career with the Brooklyn Dodgers. It culminated with his Hall of Fame selection in 1962. Jackie was an all-around player with several spectacular seasons. He hit .342 in 1949 and also led the National League in stolen bases with 37. In fact, it was because of his great speed and base-stealing ability that television coverage of baseball had the split screen to watch Jackie take his lead off at first. Robinson played in 6 World Series with the Brooklyn Dodgers, leaving an unmistakable legacy in baseball with his all-around outstanding abilities. Jackie Robinson, one of the all-time greats of the greats. Sal Magley, known as the Barber, was a top 10 all-time winning percentage pitcher who played with the Giants, Dodgers, and Yankees. Big Don Newcomb won 149 games and was a 3-time 20-game winner for Brooklyn in the 1950s. Bob Lemon won 207 games for the Cleveland Indians in a Hall of Fame career. Big Bob was a former outfielder who converted to pitcher and starred. Ah, you recognize that puckish smile. The kid from Oklahoma, number 7 on the New York Yankees, Mickey Mantle. The Mick was the center field successor to Joe DiMaggio in those Yankee dynasty years. In 18 seasons, Mantle hit .298. He slugged 536 homers and had over 1,500 RBIs. Mantle was blessed with great speed and defensive prowess. And he was a superstar throughout the 50s, winning the Triple Crown in 1956 with 52 homers, 130 runs batted in, and a .353 batting average. Mantle hit 54 home runs in the year 1961, the year that Roger Maris broke Babe Ruth's record. And Mantle may have had a shot at it too, except he missed the last several weeks of the season because of illness. Mickey played in 12 World Series and hit a record 18 home runs in series play. His 40 runs batted in and 42 runs scored are also records that still stand today in World Series action. The Mick was one of a kind. A switch hitter who did it all in the heyday of the New York Yankee dynasty. Mantle may have attained even greater success, except injured knees kept him out of the lineup several times in his career. Yet number 7 never complained and always kept battling. Mickey Mantle, who spanned the swing era to the rock era with rockin' home runs and outstanding plays for the Yankees, finally retired after the '68 season and was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1974. Warren Spahn won 363 games in 21 years, including 63 shutouts. Spahny was the premier left-hander in the National League in the 50s and early 60s, winning more than 20 games in a season 6 times in the 1950s. Spahn helped pitch the Braves to back-to-back pennants in 1957 and 58 and a world championship in 57. He was also a good hitting pitcher, helping him to his Hall of Fame selection in 1973. What a double threat. Spahn on the mound and at the plate. Meanwhile, Stan the Man Musial was the National League superstar for 22 years. Here was a former pitcher who converted to a fielding position. And what a break for the Cardinals. Musial still holds top 10 all-time stats in 8 National League categories. Musial hit 475 homers. He drove in 1,951 runs and averaged .331 in his career. Musial played in 4 World Series during the Cardinal dynasties of the 40s. And Stan was justifiably elected to the Hall of Fame in 1969. An amazing hitter, Musial led the National League in batting average 7 times. Here's his 3,000th hit that took place on a weekday afternoon at Chicago's Wrigley Field. They tried to hold Musial out, give him a rest so he could do it in front of the St. Louis fans. But when the manager needed him to pinch hit for a key time at the game, Musial delivered. A tribute to Musial's versatility was the fact that he led the league in hits 5 times, in doubles 8 times, and in triples 5 times. Stan the Man Musial could hit, and he could split his playing time between first base and the outfield. Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks, hit 512 home runs. Known as a shortstop, Banks actually played more games as a first baseman. Ernie made the Hall of Fame in 1977. Bill Mazeroski was a premier second baseman for the Pittsburgh Pirates for 17 full years. His forte was excellent defense and his amazing ability on the double play. Mazeroski had an uncanny ability to not only hit in the clutch, but to also know exactly where to play defense. He seemed to know where the ball would be hit before the batter would even swing. Though he wasn't the fastest nor the quickest second baseman, he always got to the ball rapidly and made fans at Forbes Field relax whenever a hard one was hit on that hard infield towards second. But it was that great home run against the Yankees that'll be emblazoned in everybody's mind, helping the Pirates win the 1960 series in dramatic fashion. Ken Boyer was a premier National League third baseman from the mid-50s to the mid-60s. Boyer had power. He belted 282 career homers, and he was an all-star third baseman. Ken could also hit for average, hitting over 305 times, including a .329 mark in 1961. His 2 home runs in the 1964 World Series helped the Cardinals beat the New York Yankees. Ken Boyer finished his career as a slugger in the American League with the Chicago White Sox. He'll always be remembered for his offensive and defensive prowess. Bill Moose Skowron was the Yankees slugging first baseman during the 50s and early 60s. While the Moose was a good player, hitting 77 home runs in a 3-year stretch from 1960 to 1962, Skowron's claim to fame was his devastating offensive showing in 8 World Series. The action you're seeing here is what he did to the Braves in Milwaukee in the late 50s. Skowron was the original Mr. October. He's 7th all-time with 8 World Series home runs and 6th all-time with 29 RBIs for the Fall Classic. Skowron didn't discriminate in his October wrecking, whether it was the Braves, the Dodgers, or in this case, the Cincinnati Reds. The first baseman was always reliable and always lit that extra fire when it came time for the Fall Classic. Willie Mays was the dominant National League superstar of the 1950s. The Say Hey Kid, though clowning with a baseball bat in a military presentation here, did have the beginning of his career interrupted with military service. But when he came back, did he come back in style? He could do it all: run, hit, field, throw, and hit for power. This All-Star game at Pittsburgh shows him driving in Hank Aaron with a long triple to center field. In 22 years, Mays hit 660 home runs, 3rd all-time. Most experts agree that if Mays did not have to play the majority of his home games during his career at blustery Candlestick Park in San Francisco before the outfield was enclosed, he might have made a run at Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth, the only 2 players ahead of him on the career all-time list. Mays played in 4 World Series in his career, 3 with the Giants and 1 with the Mets in 1973. Listen to some of these outstanding seasonal highs. He hit .345 in 1954. Mays belted 51 home runs in 1955, and he smacked 52 home runs in 1965. Willie's 1,903 runs batted in are 6th all-time. And could he play center field? Watch this catch at the All-Star game in Washington. Willie's signature was the cap flying, a long run, and a basket catch. He'd delight the fans at the plate, in the field, and on the base paths. Whether it was a World Series or a weekday afternoon home game at Candlestick, Willie Mays personified baseball excellence in the 50s and 60s. Not even a little injury like that could stop Willie Mays, the Say Hey Kid. Ted Williams, the splendid splinter, hit .344 in a 19-year career with the Boston Red Sox. Williams hit 521 home runs and was the last man to hit 400 with a .406 average in 1941. Ted was such a great batting star, it's claimed that he could actually see the ball hit the bat. There is no doubt that Ted Williams would have had far more home runs and better statistics had he not served his country in both World War II and the Korean War. When you say Yogi, the whole baseball world knows you're referring to Yogi Berra. The little guy from the Italian section of St. Louis was the premier American League catcher of the 50s. In 19 years, Berra hit .285 with 358 homers and 1,430 runs batted in. Yogi had a sterling .988 fielding average. In addition to all of this, he appeared in a staggering 14 World Series in his career and hit an amazing 12 World Series homers. This one off the Cincinnati Reds in 1961. Yogi also had the distinction of managing both the New York Yankees and the New York Mets. Gil Hodges was a premier first baseman of the 50s, a cornerstone of the Brooklyn Dodgers. In 16 big league seasons, Hodges hit 370 homers, had a .273 career average, and fielded his position with a .992 rate. Hodges played in 7 World Series, and he was the manager of the 1969 Miracle New York Mets. He also brought the expansion Washington Senators from last place to 6th place as their manager. Early Wynn was a 300-game winner and made the Hall of Fame in 1972, leading both Cleveland and the Chicago White Sox to American League pennants. Bob Allison was the second half of the 1-2 power punch of the mid-60s champion Minnesota Twins. Teamed with Harmon Killebrew, the burly outfielder averaged over 30 home runs from 1961 to 1964. Allison could also make sparkling fielding plays in left. He had a tremendous arm, but is known primarily for his power, with 256 career homers. These were all hit outside at the old Metropolitan Stadium. Today, indoors at the Metrodome, it's no telling how many the big guy would have powered. When you hear the song about the Duke, you know it's about Duke Snider, the superstar of the 50s with the legendary Brooklyn Dodger teams. The Duke had 5 straight 40-plus home run seasons for Brooklyn, and batting averages like .336 in 1953 and .341 in 1954. The Duke is a Hall of Famer. In 18 years, he slugged 407 home runs and averaged .295. The Duke played in 6 World Series and smashed 11 round trippers in the Fall Classic. The Duke played with class, style, and grace as he led the Dodger team to several pennants in the 50s. That last home run was with the Los Angeles Dodgers against the Chicago White Sox in 1959. Eddie Matthews was the star third baseman in the National League in the 50s. With Hank Aaron, Matthews led the Milwaukee Braves to their spectacular seasons when they won the World Series in 1957 and the pennant in 1958. In 17 years, Matthews hit 512 homers and was selected to the Hall of Fame in 1978. He also graced the cover of the first Sports Illustrated. Robin Roberts on the right won 286 games and is a Hall of Fame pitcher. Whitey Ford, the star lefty with the Yankees, was the premier Yankee pitcher of the 50s and early 60s. Whitey won 69% of his games, third best in history. His wins totaled 236, and his career ERA was 2.75. In 11 World Series, Whitey won 10 games, the all-time record. He was selected to the Hall of Fame in 1974. Nellie Fox played 19 years and led the Go-Go White Sox of the 1950s. A near miss in the Hall of Fame who should get in eventually. Roger Maris holds the single-season record most notable in all of baseball. An amazing 61 home runs hit for the Yankees in 1961. Maris went through unbelievable pressure during that year. Daily, the New York and national media was at his locker. Patches of hair began to fall from his head. But the steady Yankee right fielder, who'd come over from the Kansas City Athletics, handled the pressure and kept smacking homers. He teamed with Mickey Mantle to lead the Yanks to the 1961 World Series victory over Cincinnati. Other than that spectacular season, Maris was a solid, steady, and good ball player. He played in 7 World Series, but it wasn't just his play with the Yankees. 5 were in New York, but 2 more were with the St. Louis Cardinals in 1967 and 68. Along with those homers, Maris was an excellent defensive outfielder with a strong arm. But Roger will always be known for that special season when he broke the immortal Babe Ruth's 60 home run mark. Frank Robinson had the entire package. He was a fierce competitor, a great hitter, and a fine fielder. A Hall of Famer, Robinson hit 586 homers and batted .294 in 21 seasons in the big leagues. He played in 5 World Series, starring for both the Cincinnati Reds of the National League and the Baltimore Orioles of the American League. Robbie slammed 8 home runs in World Series play. Robinson also holds the distinction of being the first black manager in big league baseball with the Cleveland Indians in the mid-70s. Roberto Clemente, a Hall of Famer in right field, played 18 years for the Pittsburgh Pirates and hit .317. Clemente was also one of the fastest on the bases and a great defensive player in the National League. Harmon Killebrew, the Killer, hit 573 home runs and several clutch hits in 22 years on his way to the Hall of Fame. The Killer was known strictly for power and was the backbone of the Twins teams of the 60s. Sandy Koufax won 165 games in 12 seasons and was the dominant left-hander in the National League in the early 1960s. Koufax won 65% of his games, top 10 all time. He made the Hall of Fame in 1972, and in a relatively brief career, he pitched 4 no-hitters, including a perfect game. Hammerin' Hank Aaron was the man destined to overtake Babe Ruth in baseball's most sacred statistic, home runs. But not all of Hank's 2,297 RBIs were round trippers. He was a clutch hitter who could hit 300 just as easily as 40 homers. But Aaron did belt 755 home runs from 1954 to 1976. And he was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1982. Hank Aaron was also a good outfielder, as evidenced by his amazing total of 429 assists from right field. Not bad for a guy who started out as a second baseman. This action from the 1964 All-Star Game shows Cub outfielder Billy Williams hitting a 3-run homer in the first inning. Williams averaged .290 with 426 homers as he became a Cubs legend. Don Drysdale won 209 games in 14 years and went to the Hall of Fame in 1984. One of baseball's fiercest competitor, Big D averaged 254 innings in his 13-and-a-half-year career. Carl Yastrzemski played 23 years, hit 452 home runs, and ranked in the top 10 in 6 all-time American League categories. He even won a Triple Crown. Yastrzemski made the Hall of Fame in 1989 and played in 2 World Series where he hit an amazing .352. Pete Rose is the all-time hit leader in Major League Baseball with 4,256. In 24 seasons, Charlie Hustle had a .303 career average and the all-time records in games played, at-bats, and hits. Rose was an all-star at first base, second base, third base, and the outfield. Charlie Hustle shows that size isn't everything when it comes to baseball. Lou Brock changed the game of baseball. It was Brock's tremendous ability to steal a base. Brock's 938 steals is a record. But he also hit .293 in a 19-year career. He fielded well and went on to the Hall of Fame in 1985. Bob Gibson was the premier pitcher in the National League in the 1960s. In 17 years with the St. Louis Cardinals, Gibson won 251 games. He had a 2.91 earned run average, topped off in 1968 when he had a record-setting 1.12 ERA. Gibson has 7 wins in 3 World Series, and that ranks him second all-time. Nobody better get too close to the plate when this competitor was on the mound, or you'd be ready for a close shave. The strikeout was his forte. Tom Seaver won 311 games in 20 years with a career 2.86 ERA. Willie McCovey, slugger personified, hit 521 home runs in 22 years, earning him a spot in the Hall of Fame in 1986 after being the Rookie of the Year in 1959. Johnny Bench revolutionized the catching game in his 17-year career with the Cincinnati Reds. His 1,191 assists and 987 fielding average were impeccable. And his 389 career home runs helped make the Big Red Machine possible, as well as his 1989 entrance to the Hall of Fame. Reggie Jackson, Mr. October, hit 563 home runs in 21 seasons, and he played in 5 World Series with the A's and the Yankees. Brooks Robinson made the Hall of Fame in 1983. Though he was a very good hitter, his Hall of Fame entrance was a tribute to his spectacular defensive play as the Baltimore Orioles' third baseman. The human vacuum cleaner played 23 years and appeared in 4 World Series and was remembered for outstanding work like that in the field. Nothing got by Brooks Robinson at third. Still, with a .267 lifetime average and 268 home runs, he's known as an all-around player and added to the Orioles dynasty of the 60s and early 70s. Brooks Robinson, truly one of baseball's all-time great third basemen. Joe Torre was a star catcher in the National League in the 60s and 70s. Torre hit .321 for the Milwaukee Braves in 1964 and .363 for the St. Louis Cardinals in 1971. He capped an 18-year career that saw him hit 252 homers and have a career average of .297. Torre was primarily a catcher, but he also starred as a third baseman and a first baseman. Torre was a tough competitor, and when a catcher, he called some great games and helped pitchers to some of their top performances. George Brett was the latest to try to get 400 in a season. He hit an astronomical .390 in 1980. Brett, a career 300-plus hitter, was the first real superstar on the expansion Kansas City Royals. Nolan Ryan is the all-time strikeout king of Major League Baseball, as well as one of the winningest pitchers ever to play the game. Pitching well into his 40s, Ryan was one of the most feared pitchers in baseball history. Well, you've seen it all now. The fabulous pitchers, the magnificent fielders, the tremendous hitters. The golden greats of baseball are but a few of the thousands of outstanding baseball players who've participated in this great game. They combine to give us fans memories of the great plays, the great players, the great moments that will live forever. From Cooperstown to Yankee Stadium, to the memories of Ebbets Field and the Polo Ground, to baseball moving west, first west of the Mississippi, to Kansas City, and then to the west coast of California, into Texas, and expanding north to Minnesota, the nation's capital getting and losing two teams. It's all part of baseball lore. Mr. October and Mr. May, they're all included. They all live on in our minds with their outstanding talents on the field and their ability to endorse products. Baseball, a great national pastime that's provided great memories.